All right, let's get started. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Today we're going to talk about P6-Loader and how it can make your life with P6 easier and faster. My name's Ian Nicholson. I'm based in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Um, I've got over 30 years experience working in various industries. Most of my time now is spent uh, with clients doing risk analysis and running turnarounds. Joining me today is Sue Familia, who's based in Wyoming. Sue's got over 25 years of experience in project controls, and she works in transportation, power, mining, and a number of other industries. So let's talk a little bit about the struggles people have when they use P6. So the first one, and the one we hear of probably the most, is that people have trouble administering P6. Now, um, when we talk about administering P6, what do we mean? Well, the first thing is that creating users can be a bit of a chore. Moving security profiles from one database to another database can be a chore. We have one client who has about 10 active databases at any particular time because they work for clients who are very concerned about security. So those clients don't want to have their P6 data being seen by anyone else. So every time this client starts a new project, they have to open a new database. So setting up all of their standard layouts, their users, their security profiles, their EPS, their OBS, all those things with a new database is a lot of work. With P6-Loader, they can transfer all that information from one database to another in a matter of minutes. The next thing people have trouble with is developing projects. A lot of people have estimating tools that they use, and those estimating tools may or may not be able to send information to Primavera. They might have an enterprise asset management tool that they want to send information to Primavera. All of these things can be pretty tedious if you've got to type everything in multiple times. And we see it a lot of times when someone has say, a new engineering project and they want to bring all the engineering work packages into P6, or they want to bring all the construction work packages into P6. Things like loading dictionaries and things can take a lot of time. But with P6-Loader, those things can happen very quickly. The next one is data integration. Now, I spoke about estimating tools and enterprise asset management systems. But what if you have a costing system, or you're using SAP and you want to bring all of your plans and all of your costs and everything else across from SAP? Well, that can be difficult to do with P6. Oracle gives you tools to do it, but they're not easy for an average person to use. The next one is team engagement. Those of us who use P6 every day get used to using it and how it works. But for new users, P6 can be quite a steep learning curve. And it can be a real chore for people if they only have to go in periodically to do updates. It's a lot easier for them to just work in Excel and just send the information to P6 directly from Excel. And the other one we hear a lot of these days is people are concerned about having consistent portfolios. Now, a lot of companies are investing in AI, and a lot of companies are investing in uh, in dashboards and business intelligence software and all these kind of things. And there's a lot of really good information in Primavera about your projects, but it's not very useful if you haven't set up some standard coding structures. Now, you can always set up a coding structure in P6. P6 is very good at that. But to go and backfill all those old projects, all those old baselines with that new data can be quite a chore. So P6-Loader allows you to go and backfill that data very quickly and very easily. So let's talk a little bit about how P6-Loader works. So first of all, it doesn't matter where your P6 is, whether it's on premise, whether it's in the cloud, whether it's in Oracle's cloud or Azure or AWS or anybody else. We can access that data using P6-Loader. Now, you can have P6-Loader locally in your company, or P6-Loader itself can also be in the cloud. Let's talk about the technological approach that we use with P6-Loader. So just to give you a little history of P6 and integration work, we've been working with P6 since day one. We did the first implementation of P6 in Canada back in 1999 or 1998, actually. Um, and over the years, Oracle or Primavera have come out with a number of different approaches to get information in and out of their in and out of their system. The first thing they did was they created this XCR process where you could export data from one project and import it into another database. Um, and so people jumped on that and said, well, if we manipulate these XCRs, we can add all kinds of data that we want, and we can manipulate the data, and we can import it back into P6, and it works to a degree. The problem is that it only works at the project level. There's no global data like security profiles or anything like that. There's also no security or data validation around that. If you make a mistake in that XCR, you're going to import bad data, and you may potentially cause your whole P6 system to crash. And we have seen that in the past. And if you do that, Oracle will not support you. So Oracle does not recommend that you move information in and out of P6 that way. So if you do, you're kind of on your own. You also can't be selective about what you extract. You have to take a whole project. You can't take just the resource assignments on the project. You have to extract everything to do with that particular project. So then a little bit later, Primavera came up with what they called the SDK, or the Software Developers Kit. Now, the SDK allowed gave you a little more control. It allowed you to import and export global data. It did validate the data, and it did allow you to do selective extraction and multiple projects at the same time. But there was a catch. You had to be a super user to use it. You had to be an admin super user to use it, which means that there was no security around what you did. So if you made a mistake and updated the wrong project, there was nothing to stop you from doing that. It's also no longer supported by Oracle. It's been discontinued. Well, it was discontinued about 10 years ago, and Oracle has now stopped supporting it. So then Primavera came up with this idea of let's do an Excel import and export. And that works reasonably well. The data is validated. Uh, uh, it's supported by Oracle. You can select what you extract and load, but there's a couple of issues. The first one is it only does one project at a time, and you have to be a project super user to use it. So again, there's no security around it. So you can't selectively give people access to update certain things. And the final thing that Primavera came up with was the P6 XML import export process. Now that's like an improved XCR process. The data is validated, which is a big improvement over the XCRs. It is supported by Oracle, and it does let you do multiple projects. But once again, there's no security. You have to be a super user to be able to do it, and there's no global data available through it. So P6-Loader, because it works through the web services part of P6, does allow you to access global data. Your security model is fully supported. So a user who can only update one project in P6 can only update that same project through P6-Loader. All of the data is validated, and you'll get messages telling you what the problem is if it doesn't work. It's supported completely by Oracle. In fact, Oracle sells P6-Loader on their Oracle Cloud marketplace. You can select what you extract and what you load, and you can upload and download as many projects and baselines, for that matter, as you want to. So it kind of gives you the best of all worlds. Now, there's different subject areas in P6-Loader. We have global subject areas, resource and role subject areas, project and activity subject areas, and then we also include a number of utilities to make it easier to manage P6. So there's a whole bunch of different things that we can do in there, and Sue's going to show you a lot of them tonight. But essentially, you can see what we have on the global side, the resources and roles, the project information, the activity information, and also the utilities. So our utilities allow you to roll activity codes up or down. You can read XML and XCR files. You can clean XCR files of the POBS and risk type records that cause all kinds of issues. You can run job services. So after you've done your load, you can tell P6 to go ahead and reschedule all the projects that you updated. You can roll calendars down. You can move reports and layouts from one P6 environment to another. And you can even tell it to update your database, or sorry, to back up your database. So, if you're concerned about data being lost, you can update your data or backup, sorry, your database directly from P6-Loader. So how does it work? Well, the idea is we decide what we want to extract, whatever it happens to be. We can extract one project or many projects. We can extract projects and their baselines, the resources and expenses. And then we can do whatever data manipulation we need to do in Excel, including running macros or pulling information from other places. And then we can basically load it back up into P6. So let's take a look at how it works. I'm going to hand this over to Sue, and Sue's going to show you how P6-Loader works, and I'll join back at the end just to wrap things up. So Sue, you should have control now.
I do, thank you. And just before I get started, if you do end up having any questions as we go along, if you want to put them in the chat room, Ian or I will try to field those as I go along. Or I guess both of us go along. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And first of all, we're going to go and talk a little bit about P6-Loader and logging in and things like that. So just like P6, P6-Loader can point to different databases. So you can have one P6-Loader tool, and if you have multiple databases, we can actually point it to each database that you want to work with. So I'm going to go into this demo 2020 and log in. One thing to note, Ian did mention it, is that anything, because it goes through the API or web services, you cannot, if you do not have access or rights to get that, to work with data in P6, P6-Loader is also not going to let you work with that data. So to understand a little bit about how P6-Loader works and how it's kind of set up, I'm going to go into this extraction screen here. Now, this is the screen that you would go into if you wanted to pull data out of P6. So as Ian mentioned, we have a few modules out here that are going to assist you with that. So we have our user area. That's going to touch anything that has to do with users. So that would be your security profiles, your users themselves, what OBS they are assigned to, as well as the access to resources there. We also have access to global information. So any type of global information that you would want to work with in P6, you can work with also with P6-Loader. And that includes your OBS EPS structure, if you use any kind of benefit spending plans, if you want to work with project codes, activity codes, calendars, user-defined fields, what have you. We also have a section that completely deals with your roles and resources, including units of measure, curves, roles, limits, resources and their limits, resource codes. So touches all those pieces of your roles and resources as well. If you do use the risk portion of P6, we do have the ability to work with that risk data out there, as well as your project information, including, that project job module that Ian spoke about, where you can submit jobs and have them run after you've maybe done a huge load of a bunch of projects. You could go and submit that, and it would automatically schedule them, summarize them, whatever you needed to do with them. We also have your WBS, and notebooks are included as well at all levels. And then finally, our activity information. So anything you might want to do with an activity, meaning create them, do relationships, assign your resources, put in manual spreads like bucket loading, update actuals, all those types of things that you might want to touch in a project. Now that's what is included on the right-hand side. And just for a moment, I do want to go back and visit this usage area. These are some of the tools that we've provided with P6-Loader to help you manage your data in P6. So what these usage sheets do is they are going to go and they are going to find what projects in your database are using any particular user-defined field or activity code and such, and how many times in each project, so that you can kind of analyze, how is my data being used? Is there data I could maybe get rid of because I'm no longer using it? It's an obsolete code now or something like that. These are some of those tools there. I'm also going to visit how to do a code roll down in the activity area as one of my examples. On the right-hand side is where your projects are. So this is essentially your EPS structure. And as you can either drill down to where you want to go, and as you get down and you find that you have projects, they're going to be labeled, but whether they're active, inactive, whatever. And then you could choose one, or maybe you want to choose several. And you could pull out whatever data you want to from those modules on the left-hand side. We also have the ability on both sides to search for that type of data, and you can find your projects a lot easier if you either have the project ID or the project name. So just as an example as to how data looks when you pull it out with P6-Loader, I'm going to pull out my OBS and my EPS structure in this case. I don't have any projects that I need to have associated with it because it is a global piece of data. So I'm going to extract that, and I simply mark my modules and my projects if that is pertinent, and then I'm going to say extract. It's going to go out and it's going to show me my results area. And once it is completed, I can go ahead and I can download this Excel file. So I'm going to wait for it to open here a minute, and I'm going to enable it so I can kind of click around and show you some of these things. Now, if you'll notice, I do have two different tabs on my worksheet or my workbook. You're going to get a tab for each module that you are working with. So in this case, not only do I have an OBS tab, but I do have an EPS tab as well. Now, as I'm talking about what all these columns are and how you can kind of determine what they're all for, each sheet is going to have a different number of columns depending on the data that you're wanting that you can pull out for that particular module. So for my OBS, I can see that I don't have a bunch of stuff to pull out because it's a pretty simple structure out there. In all cases, you will get colors across those column headers. Now, if a column header has a red background, that indicates that for this module, this is a required piece of data. You have to have that column in there in order for P6-Loader to work with the data, in this case, our OBS. If it has an orange or reddish orange font, that's going to indicate that you can remap that piece of data that is in your red there. So because P6-Loader needs the name of the OBS to go work with it, you can't just change it here because it won't find it. So you would put it in this column, your new name. So let's say I want to do Emerald here instead. I would put Emerald in. It's going to go out. It's going to find that EAI OBS element, and it will change the name to Emerald. So now it has been updated after I've loaded this. The blue columns are columns that are going to be used to either create or edit information. Now, if I'm not using a column, let's say I don't have any changes or I don't need to add that particular column data in, I can, in that case, delete the column. It's not going to affect anything in the way that P6-Loader works. What it will do is it's not there, so it's just not going to handle it. We also have these gray columns. Now, gray columns indicate that these are informational only. In some cases, in the case of where we have summary information, let's say at our EPS level, if I close this down, I see that I have a whole section of summary data about my EPS. Now, I can't change this data, but sometimes it's nice to pull that data out and take a look so that you can do some comparisons and things like that. So in the case of these gray columns as well, if you're not using them, then you can simply highlight them and get rid of them as well. So the only mandatory column that you need in a P6-Loader sheet, and in this case, you can see I need more mandatory columns for my EPS. I would only need those three in order for P6-Loader to find that piece of data. So this is kind of an administrative type of thing that might be going on here. A lot of, like as Ian mentioned, we have several clients who spin up a database every time they have a new client because they want to keep that information in a separate database. What those clients can do is essentially pull an EPS and OBS structure out of one of their databases and then quickly spin up another database and load that structure in. So they have the same structure, but different projects would reside in there. In another case of administration, I do want to show you a code roll down. So I'm going to go into P6 and I'm going to take a look. Oh, and I have the wrong thing open here. I am going to take a look at a project that has some codes that are kind of messed up here. So I have a bunch of codes that are assigned. I have a phase code. I have an equipment code, but oh my, I also have another equipment code. And they have the same information in both of those codes. So somehow or another, we've gotten two equipment codes created and they're being used. However, we want to consolidate those. Now, my phase code is at the global level, and I don't necessarily want it there. I want it at the EPS level. It only pertains to projects that are in a certain EPS. So I want to roll that down to the EPS level. I've also got those two equipment codes. Those are at two different levels. So I've got one at the global level, and I've got one at the EPS level. Well, I want to combine those, and I want to keep that code as an EPS code. I also have some specs here, and these specs are, again, duplicated. They're both at the global level. They both have information in them. That information is assigned in my project, but I want to combine those, and I want to keep what's assigned as those values there. But this doesn't need to be a piece of global information. This actually is only pertinent to my project, so I want to make this a project level activity code. And the same goes for my work order. So my work order code right now is a global code, and I want to push that down to a project level. Now in P6, we can promote codes easy enough, but you cannot demote them in P6 itself. So the way I would do that is I would be using our code activity code roll down utility. So essentially with this utility is I take the present scope or level of the code. I would put that code name there in my name area. And then I would say where I wanted to roll it down to. So in this case, I'm going to roll it to the EPS, and I'm going to rename it as well. So I want to give this a new name. I also need to identify what EPS I want to roll that code down to. So I'm going to give it that EPS name here, that EPS ID. For my equipment codes, I had them at two different levels. I've included their names here. I've told it that I want to make these EPS code level activity codes, and I want to change their name as well when I consolidate them. Now, in the case of where it's combining codes, what it is going to do is it's going to go ahead and combine that dictionary of those two separate dictionaries. And then it's going to reassign them in my activities so that I don't have to go out and reassign them. They're going to actually do that automatically. Again, I'm going to put the EPS ID. Now, in the case of my specs, they're both global, but I want to combine them and I want to put them at the project level. And by giving them the same name, it's going to combine those dictionaries and reassign them. And then it's going to make it a project level activity code in my roll down project. In the global of my work order, I just want to put that down to the project level. I just want to roll it down. I don't want to rename it. I want to keep that same name for it. So I don't need to put a new name in. It's just going to automatically keep it that name. And then again, tell it what project I want it associated with. Now this last column is going to tell P6-Loader what you want to do with that original code. So in the case of my first ones here, I actually want to make sure that everything is, that I've analyzed these okay, and that I don't have them used on any other projects or any other EPS or anything like that before I delete them. So I'm going to say, P6-Loader, keep those codes out there for now until I get a chance to look. But in the case of the work order, I already know that this work order is, I don't need it anymore at that global level. It is only assigned to my project that I'm working with. And so I'm going to go ahead and delete it at the global level. So once I have that set up, I'm going to go into P6-Loader and I'm going to use the upload area. Now the upload area is very simple. I essentially have saved my worksheet or my workbook, and I simply need to browse out to it, select it, and tell P6-Loader to upload it. It's going to go out, it's going to find those codes, it's going to combine them, it's going to reassign them, and I'm done. So once I'm successful, I can go back into P6 and I can refresh my data. And I can see that indeed those codes are gone, but I need to add and make sure that I do have my other codes there. So at my EPS level, I have my new phase code, I have my new equipment, and in my globals, you can see that my work order one is gone. And at my project level, I have my specs and I have my work order. So I can go out here and I can take a look and I can see that, yes, indeed, they have been pushed down and reassigned. My equipment has been combined and reassigned, as well as my specs, and my work order has come over as well. So this is a really nice utility for kind of managing those activity codes that get created or duplicated or what have you in your P6 environment. So the next thing I want to do is basically show you how you would create a project. And I'm going to do almost everything I need to do to create my project. You don't necessarily have to do all of these steps all at once when you're creating a project. You can, create your WBS and then create your activities after that as you get that information in. However, I'm going to do it all in one load. So I'm just going to change my layout here so that we can see, first of all, there's no WBS structure, there's no activities, anything like that. Also, I'm going to be creating resources for this project. And I'm going to put those resources under this P6-Loader tree here. So when they're created, they're going to come in underneath that P6-Loader tree. So let's take a look at what each one of those sheets are going to look like. So in my WBS, essentially I'm creating it. I'm putting some hierarchy in here. So I have my first levels that I'm telling it, okay, I want you to put it underneath the project here. And that's on this one and this one as well. Those are my level ones. And then for my level twos, I'm actually going to create some children for that. So I'm going to give it the parent WBS it needs to land under and give it a number as well as a name. And anything that you would need to set at the WBS is available on this sheet. Now, for this project, I need some special project codes. So I'm going to create a discipline, an area, and a work package code. Now, this is going to create the code itself. And then on this next sheet, I am going to create my dictionary for each one of those codes. So I've got all of my values for my discipline. I've got my values for my area, as well as my work package. Now I want to create my activities. So what I've done here is, told it what WBS it needs to go in, given it an ID, and I've given it a name. However, I've used the functionality in Excel to help me build my name. I've used a formula. So I'm making it uppercase, and I am concatenating columns G, H, and I to create this name. Now I've added an extra column here, and that extra column is called title. Well, P6-Loader doesn't understand what title means. Because it doesn't understand it, it's just going to skip over it when I am actually loading my data. So I can keep that column in there when I load this so that I can maintain, kind of some history about for my spreadsheet. I can see that, okay, yes, I used those 3 columns to create this name here. Another thing that P6-Loader will do is if you are using a formula in your Excel sheet, it will take the results of that formula and load the results. You don't have to go and copy and paste this as a value. P6-Loader already knows it needs to take the value and not the formula when it loads it in. I'm setting my project codes that I created. I'm going to populate those. I'm also going to populate some global codes as well. So you can populate your codes and your user-defined fields at the same time. You can set your duration types, anything you wanted to do on an activity. Now, I also have some expenses for a couple of my activities here. So I'm going to actually build out those expenses, put some prices to them, decide how I want to accrue them, all on this sheet. Now, in conjunction with that, I need a new cost account structure created in P6. So I'm going to build out that cost account structure as well. Some of my activities need some steps. So I'm going to build out those steps on there. And you can see that a lot of these have the same steps in multiple activities. So again, using the ease of Excel, because pretty much everybody knows how to use Excel, I could take these, I could copy them. I can then insert those copied cells. And then let's say this is my ID, my activity ID I want to put it to, and then I can simply add it and not have to do a bunch of typing or copying and pasting completely. I could just take those as a group. Now, another thing that I really am fond of in P6-Loader is the ease of working with your calendars. In P6, especially if you have a special calendar like this one, this is a 10x4 rotating calendar, 10 on, 4 off. Now in P6, you have to click all kinds of different boxes and things like that, count them, mark them as work days, mark them as non-work days, and it gets a little bit tedious, and you're prone to making mistakes on that counting. So I can create that calendar. I can assign it its hours that it needs per day, month, week, year. Then I have another sheet that's going to establish the work time for that calendar. And then I have my exception sheet. And with this, because it is rotating, I can use another formula with P6 or in Excel. So I started with my first date, and then I'm adding one to it and for my next 4 days. So it's automatically going to calculate that for me, so I don't have to, make sure that I'm calculating it right, that I've typed in the numbers right, anything like that. Then for my next set of days off, I'm using a formula to calculate that. And then again, taking those next 4 days and using that calculation as well. So this is going to be a lot more accurate, especially on some of those more difficult calendars that you have to set up. Now, I also need a resource code established. I'm going to establish this contractor resource code, and I'm going to add a dictionary for it. And in this dictionary, I've actually added in some hierarchy for that dictionary as well. Now for my resources, I need a number of resources for my project. So I'm creating those resources. I'm even assigning that calendar that I just created. And one thing with P6-Loader is it doesn't matter what order your tabs are in. P6-Loader knows the order that it needs to create the data so that you can use it when you're ready to assign it. So it knows it needs to create that calendar before it's going to assign it to any of my resources in this case. I'm also going to assign my contractor, and I'm also going to set a couple of other codes that are already existing in my database. Now I want to assign my resources to my activities. So on this sheet, I'm telling it what project and the activity ID. Then I'm putting in resources. I'm putting in some roles. I'm even doing some cost accounts in this case. And I am actually starting to plan my duration, my units, my costs for each one of my resources for this project. Now, finally, I need to build out my logic. So with P6-Loader, you put in your project ID and then your activity ID and tell it what the successor is, both by the project and the activity ID. You can set the type within this sheet, and you can even add lag if need be. Now, one great thing about this is that I can do also cross-project relationships because I am using both the project ID and the activity ID when I'm defining that relationship there. So if I have cross-project relationships that are set up and I am, weekly or every 2 weeks importing a schedule from a contractor that I want to recreate the cross-project relationships to my master project, what I can do is I can save those relationships and then reapply them to that new project that I import in. So very easy to create those cross-project relationships. So let's go ahead and let's create our project and everything we need for it. So I'm going to go to my upload area. I'm going to browse to that workbook, and then I'm going to upload it. P6-Loader is going to go out. It's going to create all that information that I defined, and it's going to assign everything where it needs to go. And then once it is completed, I can refresh my data again. And now I can see that under my P6-Loader, I've got all my new resources. I've also got that calendar that I created. And then over in the activities, I've got my durations, I've got my steps, I've got my logic in there, my resources and roles, and planning of my activities in my project. So like I said, you don't have to do this all in one fell swoop. You can do it, a module or several modules at a time. But if you have all that information and you want to load it all at the same time, you certainly can do that. Now, the next thing I want to visit is working with baselines in P6. So I'm going to open this WestTA 22 project. And I already have created a baseline out here for this project. I'm just going to spot my layout here. But I need to update my baseline. I have some found work that I want to add in, not only to my baseline, but to my project as well. And I also want to debit and credit some units and costs on this particular baseline. So I have my baseline and I have my project here. And then I do have a variance column. So the way I would do that is I would pull out the baseline information from my project. And I can tell it's a baseline based on the project ID. So our baselines are given IDs with a B1, B2, etc. on them. So I want to add this to my first baseline, my project baseline. And first of all, I want to add my found work. So I'm adding it not only to my baseline, but also to my project. And that's that activity 1530. I am also going to assign, where is it? Oh, it's not in here. Oh, it's going to have a global code for my work scope as add E. So when I assign it, I'm going to be able to tell that it is added work. And then in the case of 1560 and 1580, I just need to move around some costs. I need to debit one and credit the other. I'm also going to do that with its units. So what I pulled out from P6 is actually this $90. I've added a column so that I can use a formula to calculate, make sure that my calculations are correct for adding that $90 into one and subtracting it from the other, doing a calculation, and then I'm going to reload that into my planned labor costs. I'm doing the same for units, and I'm doing $180 between 1060 and 1080. So I wouldn't necessarily have to load all of these rows. I only need to load the roles that I'm going to change. So I don't have to include all of these rows that don't have any highlights on them. I could simply delete those rows and just load up those six rows that are highlighted. In this case, I'm just going to keep them because I wanted to show you that we had, all those baseline activities that came out. So I'm going to go and upload this file so I can update my baseline. So I'm going to go and choose that and upload. Go back to P6 and refresh my data. And I can see I have my found work here that was added. And I've got my debit and my credits going between my my 4 activities. So now I can see that there is a difference there. So a really easy way to update your baselines, work with your baselines, a lot less cumbersome than the functionality in P6 that is provided, as well as a lot easier than detaching that project baseline, updating it, and then reattaching it. Now, finally, on my loads here, the last thing I want to do, I clicked the wrong place. I am going to give you an example of updating using P6-Loader. So I have 2 projects here, and those projects are brand new projects. I haven't had any work performed on them, and I want to do my first update. So I have these out, and I'm going to again change my layout so that we have, it's easier to see what's happening with this. I have my layout here, and I can see that I've got, no progress. They're all not started activities. And although these are small projects, this is just for, of course, your example. And not only am I going to update it, but I'm also going to put values in for my units into different financial periods for my project. So what I would do is in our extraction area, we do have the ability to set up we can determine what we want to pull out on a particular sheet, because some of these sheets have a whole lot of data. So in the case of an activity, I can have my UDFs come out, I can have my codes come out, I can have every little piece of data be pulled out. But if I want to limit that, what I can do is I can use this little pencil here. And what that's going to do is allow me to select which fields I want to pull out from my database rather than taking them all. So you just pick and choose. It's just like P6. The left is what is available and the right is what's actually in there. By default, we're taking everything. So I can simply move them back and forth by either highlighting a bunch or a few or whatever and moving them back and forth. Now with my user-defined fields, the same goes. It's going to display all of my user-defined fields. I can pick and choose which ones I want to actually come over or want pulled out and which ones I don't. Or maybe I don't want any of them. And codes works the same way. You have all your codes. On the left is what is not going to be pulled out. On the right is what's going to be pulled out. Now, the great thing about this is that I don't have to recreate this every time I come into P6-Loader. What I can do is I can create a definition, and I've done that for this particular exercise. What I have is I have some definitions that already have the values that I want to pull out and or not the values, the columns that I want to pull out, as well as anything else that I wanted to save on there. So what I'm going to do is I am going to select this update example. I've already created that and I'm going to load that. When I load that, it's going to ask me if I want to discard my changes, because yes, I do, because I was showing you that example. And when I do that, what I can see is I'm going to bring out my activity module, and I'm only bringing out the pieces of information I need for whomever is going to update my schedule. They are going to pull that. I'm going to send that to them, and they can update it, send it back to me, and I can run it in with P6-Loader. So I'm not including any user-defined fields, nor am I including any codes. So with that, I've also marked the projects that I want to pull out with this particular process. And so I'm going to do my P6L BP1 and BP2. I don't have to recreate it again. It's already there for me. So then I can load that definition and I can simply say extract. Now if I wanted to just keep that sheet for any project that I wanted to update, I wouldn't even have to mark any projects as well. So once I get that, I can download. And it's going to bring out all the fields that I need to have updated. And it looks like I got a snafu in here. So I'm going to go over to my sheet that actually has been updated and let's take a look at that. So on my activity, what I sent out to my field people or whomever is I sent them blank actual start, blank actual finish, no percent complete, and everything was not started. When they updated it, they put, I mean, and they don't even have to do this status. What either you could fill it in, or based on the percent complete, that could also mark it as in progress or completed. I have an actual start for both of my start milestones, and I have an actual start for 2 of my activities. Now, in conjunction with that, I also, it's been a couple of months since I have done an update, or maybe I got an update from last month that didn't quite make it through on time. What I can do is I can actually load into my financial periods the units in this case. I can also do costs if I need to. I can load in each one of those financial periods that data that I received. So on my earthworks for this activity, I had 2,200 actual units in May and 500 in June. For all of my resources on this activity, I only got information for June. So I can go and, again, once I have it back, I've checked it out, made sure that everything looks pretty good on it, I can go and grab that file and upload that as well. Once it's done, go and refresh again. And now I can see that I have progress on each one of my activities. And on that activity where I had my earthworks, I can see where my 2,200 has come in, as well as my 500 cubic meters. On my other activity where I had all of my resources that had work or had actuals on them, I now have those loaded as well. So this can be an easy way to get updates and progress on your projects when a person is not necessarily a user of P6. So we only have about 7 minutes left. So I'm gonna, I don't see any questions right now, but again, if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I think I might have enough time to just kind of visit the backups really quick. Sorry, Ian, I'm gonna kind of cut you short. What we can do now with P6-Loader is create backups automatically. So what I can do is in this automate area, I have several databases that I have set to do automatic backups. What that's going to do is it's going to come and in my case, it's going to export daily all of my active projects. Now, I could also choose to export on a weekly basis, and maybe I want my planned what ifs, inactives, and templates done at that point. I could set it to do that. But in my case, I just do a daily backup on my active projects. I would set these here, and then each day it's going to run a job and it's going to export by default an XML file, but I could also set it to export a P6-Loader file as well. So when I go into my jobs, you can see that this has been running on 2 of my databases on a regular basis. If I needed to go and find out data, or maybe get a file to restore it back to a certain date, I can go and I could select that date. I can download that zip file, and then I would be able to see all the XML backups, and I could re-import that XML. Now, not only does it back up your projects, but it also will back up all of your global data. So this is a really nice feature. I know I just glossed over it really quickly, but it is something that has become more and more important in recent weeks with everything. So I'm going to go ahead now and let Ian wrap things up.
All right, thanks, Sue. All right, so we get lots of good feedback from our customers about P6-Loader. Um, you can read them here. I don't need to read them to you, but the one I quite like is there's one that is where the client said, "I love it and wish we did this 2 years ago." This is after we spent 2 years trying to convince this client that she should buy P6-Loader. So it's always nice to hear those kind of feedbacks. Um, and again, you know, great feedback we get from people. And some of our clients, we have clients all over the world using P6-Loader. Some are in the energy industry, some are in construction, just a whole bunch of different industries, shipbuilding. Um, and Emerald can help with all kinds of issues. So in addition to tools like P6-Loader, we have other tools like we have our updating tools, we have reporting tools, we have all sorts of different add-ons for Primavera, but we also do services, implementation, integration, clouds, and we do training. Um, so basically, we're a one-stop shop for all things Oracle Primavera and all things Safran. So I'm not seeing any questions, but I'm going to put up Sue's contact information here in case anybody does have any questions. I've also put Donna's contact. So Donna's our representative, and she's based in the Philippines, and she's on tonight. And if it's more convenient for you to reach out to Donna, you can certainly do that as well. All right. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and thanks for joining us.